The eternal fog of Eldrith never lifted. It coiled through the narrow alleys like a living thing, swallowing lantern light and muffling the distant toll of midnight bells. Rain fell in relentless sheets, turning the cobblestones into mirrors that reflected nothing but shadows. In one such forgotten lane, behind the crumbling facade of the old scriptarium, Eloan Voss lay broken against the damp stone. Her scholar's robes, once the proud indigo of the arcane conservatory, were torn and heavy with blood. A cruel blade had sliced across her throat, severing not just flesh but the delicate threads of magic that bound her voice. She could no longer speak, no longer weave the incantations that had been her life. Worse, the fall from the upper balcony had shattered her spine. Her legs lay twisted at impossible angles, numb and useless beneath her. Abandoned like refused by those she had trusted most, she waited for death in silence, emerald eyes dimming under strands of rain-soaked auburn hair. Then came the sound of hooves, slow, deliberate, cutting through the storm like a blade through silk. From the mist emerged a rider cloaked in deepest emerald, silver hair streaming like moonlight made tangible. Lord Thalorian, once sovereign of the Whispering Woods, exiled for centuries, reigned in his midnight steed. His pointed ears caught the faint, ragged rhythm of a dying heart. He dismounted with predatory grace, boots splashing in puddles that reflected his storm-blue eyes, eyes that had not softened in 1,000 years. He knelt beside her, gloved fingers brushing aside wet strands from her face. The scent of ancient forests and starlit glades clung to him, cutting through the stench of blood and betrayal. When his gaze met hers, something cracked inside his immortal chest. A memory of laughter lost in a war-torn grove, of green eyes flecked with gold that had closed forever long ago. This was no mere scholar. This was an echo. A return. Thunder rolled overhead as Thalorian gathered her shattered body into his arms, her blood staining the intricate silver embroidery of his cloak. His voice, low and lethal, promised the night itself, "Whoever did this to you will beg for oblivion before I am through." The fog swallowed them both as he carried her into the darkness, toward a hidden sanctum where forbidden magic still burned. Eldrith would soon learn what happened when an exiled elven king found the one soul he thought lost forever. And the city would bleed for it. The gates of Thornvale Enclave creaked open under Thalorian's silent command, ancient wards recognizing the blood of their maker even after centuries of exile. The hidden manor lay deep within the Blackthorn Forest, a place mortals avoided and even lesser fae feared to tread. Moonlight filtered through twisted branches, painting silver patterns across the moss-covered courtyard as Thalorian carried the unconscious woman through the archway. She weighed almost nothing in his arms, fragile as frost on winter glass. Her head rested against his chest, auburn hair spilling over the emerald velvet of his cloak like spilled wine. Blood still seeped slowly from the gash across her throat, though the flow had slowed to a trickle. The scent of it, iron mixed with something older, wilder, clawed at memories he had buried beneath layers of ice and vengeance. Inside the great hall, torches ignited of their own accord, flames burning pale blue. Servants, silent wraiths bound to his service long ago, materialized from the shadows, but Thalorian waved them away with a sharp gesture. He climbed the sweeping staircase alone, boots leaving wet prints on the obsidian stone, and carried her into the eastern wing where no guest had been permitted in 500 years. The chamber had once belonged to Lyriel. He laid the scholar upon the vast bed, its posts carved from living star oak that still whispered faintly in the old tongue. Rain hammered against the stained glass windows, throwing fractured colors across her bruised face. Thalorian removed his soaked cloak and tossed it aside, then knelt beside her. With careful precision he peeled away the ruined indigo robes. The damage was worse than he had feared. Bruises bloomed across her ribs like storm clouds. Her left arm was broken in 2 places. But the true cruelty lay lower. Her spine had been deliberately shattered at the base of her back, a precise and vicious strike meant to leave her alive but imprisoned in her own body. Whoever had done this wanted her to suffer. His fingers hovered over the throat wound. The cut was clean, made by a ritual blade, silver infused with void salt. It had not only severed flesh but unraveled the delicate lattice of vocal magic every conservatory scholar wove into their voice. She would never speak again unless the damage was undone by power far beyond mortal healing. Thalorian's jaw tightened. He pressed 2 fingers to her temple and closed his eyes. The mind link was gentle at first, a brush of moonlight across still water. He expected resistance, pain, confusion. Instead he found only silence, an endless, aching quiet where words should have been. Images flickered, candlelit libraries, ink-stained fingers turning parchment, the laughter of fellow scholars. Then darkness. Betrayal. A face he could not quite see. A fall. He withdrew, breathing harder than he wished. The resemblance was not merely in her features. It was deeper. The cadence of her thoughts, the quiet curiosity that underlay even her fear, it echoed Lyriel so perfectly it felt like mockery. A soft knock interrupted him. Valor, his oldest remaining guardian, stood in the doorway, tall, scarred, silver-haired like his lord but with eyes of winter gray. "My lord," Valor said quietly, "the wards report movement on the eastern road. 3 riders. They bear the sigil of the Obsidian Circle." Thalorian rose slowly. The Obsidian Circle, rival sorcerers who had profited most from his exile, stripping his lands and titles while he wandered in disgrace. They were bold to come so close to Thornvale. "They seek her," Thalorian said. It was not a question. Valor inclined his head. "One of the riders carries a seeker stone attuned to fresh blood. They will know she lives." Thalorian looked back at the bed. The woman, Eloan Voss, her conservatory badge red, stirred faintly, a low sound of pain escaping her lips. Her eyes remained closed, but her fingers twitched as if reaching for something lost. "Then they will learn what it costs to hunt in my forest." He turned to Valor. "Double the outer wards. Wake the sentinels. If they cross the boundary line, leave none breathing." Valor hesitated. "And the girl?" Thalorian's gaze lingered on her face, on the faint golden flecks in her emerald eyes that he had glimpsed in the alley. A mark he had not seen in 1,000 years. "She remains here. Prepare the healing pool. I will attempt the old rites tonight." Valor's eyes widened. "The starlight immersion?" "My lord, it has not been used since." "Since Lyriel," Thalorian finished, voice like gravel. "I am aware." The guardian bowed and withdrew. Alone again, Thalorian sat on the edge of the bed. He brushed a strand of hair from Eloan's forehead, his touch feather-light. "Who are you truly?" he whispered to the silence. "And why have the fates returned you to me now, broken and bleeding?" Outside, thunder rolled through the forest like distant war drums. Somewhere beyond the wards, riders urged their mounts faster, unaware that they rode toward an ancient wrath awakening. In the bed, Eloan's fingers curled weakly around the edge of the silk sheet, as if anchoring herself against the coming storm. And deep within Thornvale's roots, something long dormant began to stir, old magic answering the call of blood and memory. The hunt had begun. Dawn crept through the stained-glass windows of Thornvale in shafts of pale rose and violet, but the light felt cold. Eloan Voss woke to silence, not the absence of sound but the absence of her own voice. She lay very still, throat aching with the memory of a scream that had never emerged. When she tried to speak, to whisper even her own name, nothing came. Only the raw scrape of air over scarred tissue. Panic rose like bile. She sat up too quickly, the room tilting. Silk sheets slid from her shoulders, revealing bandages wrapped tightly around her ribs and a soft linen shift that was not her own. Her legs, miraculously, responded. She flexed her toes beneath the covers, felt the cool fabric against her skin, and nearly wept at the simple miracle of sensation. The healing pool had done its work on her spine and bones. But the void salt blade had stolen what mattered most to a scholar: words. Across the chamber, a fire crackled in a hearth carved with scenes of ancient battles. Beside it stood Thalorian, back to her, staring into the flames as though they held answers. He had changed into a sleeveless tunic of dark gray, the silver torque at his throat catching the firelight. His silver hair was bound loosely at the nape, revealing the sharp, elegant points of his ears. He turned when he sensed her movement. Those storm-blue eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made the air feel thinner. "You are awake," he said, voice low, almost gentle. The immersion succeeded beyond my hope. Your body mends. Eloan opened her mouth. Tried again. A faint rasp escaped, barely audible, more breath than sound. Frustration burned hot behind her eyes. She gestured sharply to her throat, then to the empty air as if grasping for lost words. Thalorian crossed the room in 3 silent strides and sat on the edge of the bed. The wound was poisoned with void salt. It severed the lattice of your vocal magic. I stabilized you, but I have not yet restored what was taken. She stared at him, questions piling unspoken. Who was he? Why had he saved her? And most urgent, why did looking at him feel like staring into a mirror of someone else's grief? He seemed to read at least some of it. You are in Thornvale Enclave, my stronghold. I am Thalorian, once Lord of the Whispering Woods. I found you dying in Eldrith. The men who attacked you wore the sigil of the Obsidian Circle. The name struck her like a blow. The Obsidian Circle, whispered about in conservatory halls as ruthless collectors of rare magical bloodlines. She had always dismissed the stories as paranoid rumor. Until 3 nights ago. Memory flooded back in jagged pieces. She had been working late in the restricted archives, cataloging a newly acquired tome bound in pale leather. Inside, hidden between pages of star charts, she had found a folded letter addressed to her by name. The handwriting was familiar. Cassian Vale, a senior archivist she had trusted, almost loved. He had asked her to meet him after hours to discuss a delicate discovery about her parentage. She had gone. Cassian had not been alone. 2 hooded figures waited in the shadows. When she turned to flee, Cassian's hand had clamped over her mouth. His voice, soft and apologetic. I'm sorry, Eloan. Your blood is too dangerous to leave free. Then the fall. The blade. The silence. Her hands shook now. She reached for the small writing desk beside the bed, found quill and parchment already laid out, as if Thalorian had anticipated her need. With trembling fingers she wrote. They wanted my blood. Cassian Vale betrayed me. Said it was dangerous. Thalorian read the words, and something lethal kindled in his expression. Cassian Vale, he repeated, tasting the name like poison. A lieutenant of Malt Heron, then. The Circle has been hunting dormant bloodlines for decades. They seek to distill sunblood essence into a weapon that can unmake wards, shatter oaths, burn through any defense. He touched the faint crescent mark on her shoulder, visible where the shift had slipped. The contact sent warmth spiraling through her skin. This mark proves you carry it. Pure. Uncorrupted. The last sunblood walked these lands 1,000 years ago. She was my. He stopped, jaw clenching. Eloan wrote quickly, your wife? Thalorian's gaze met hers, raw and unguarded for the first time. Lyrial. Yes. She sacrificed herself to end the war of shattered skies. I believed her line extinct. Until I carried you from that alley and felt the echo of her soul in your blood. The confession hung between them. Eloan's heart pounded. Reincarnation was theoretical magic, debated in dusty scrolls, never proven. Yet the way he looked at her, as though seeing 2 women superimposed, made it terrifyingly real. She wrote again, slower, I am not her. No, he said quietly. You are Eloan Voss. Scholar. Survivor. And whether you are her returned or simply bear her echo, you are under my protection now. A distant horn sounded, 3 low notes that vibrated through the stone walls. Thalorian rose instantly, every line of his body shifting to predator. Valor signals approach. The Circle wastes no time. He moved to the door, then paused. Remain here. The inner wards will hold, but I would feel better knowing you are safe. Eloan shook her head fiercely. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, still marveling that they obeyed, and stood on unsteady feet. The floor was cold beneath her bare soles, but she welcomed the sensation. She pointed to herself, then to him. Insistence clear. Thalorian's lips curved in the faintest, reluctant smile. Stubborn. Very well. But you will stay behind me. He offered his arm. After a moment's hesitation, she took it. His skin was cool, strength coiled beneath like living steel. Together they descended the grand staircase. In the entrance hall, Valor waited with a dozen armored sentinels, tall fey warriors in blackthorn mail, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. They come openly, Valor reported. 20 riders under banner of parley. Cassian Vale rides at the front. Thalorian's grip on Eloan's arm tightened fractionally. Parley. They seek to negotiate her surrender before committing to siege. He looked down at her. Do you wish to face him? Eloan's pulse thundered in her ears. Fear coiled cold in her belly, but beneath it burned something hotter. Rage. She nodded once. Thalorian's eyes gleamed with approval, and something darker. Then let us greet our guests. The great doors of Thornvale swung open. Outside, mist swirled across the courtyard. 20 riders waited just beyond the inner gate, cloaks dark with rain. At their head sat Cashin Vale, golden-haired, scholarly robes immaculate, the face she had once trusted smiling as though nothing had changed. His gaze found Eloan immediately. Surprise flickered, then calculation. Eloan, he called, voice carrying easily. You live. I am relieved. Come with us now peacefully. Lord Maltheron offers protection, healing for your voice, a place of honor. Every word was a lie wrapped in velvet. Eloan felt Thalorian tense beside her, power gathering like storm clouds. Cashin's eyes shifted to Thalorian. Exiled lord, this matter does not concern you. Deliver the girl, and the circle will overlook your interference. Thalorian stepped forward, placing himself between Eloan and the riders. When he spoke, his voice rolled across the courtyard like thunder over distant mountains. You mistake me for someone who negotiates with traitors. He raised one hand. The wards flared, lines of silver fire racing along the ground, sealing the gate. Leave my lands before the sun sets, Cashin Vale. Or none of you will leave at all. Cashin's smile thinned. You protect a weapon that could unmake the realms, Thalorian. Think carefully. I protect what is mine, Thalorian answered. And she is. Behind him, Eloan felt the truth of it settle into her bones. Not possession claim. The same fierce vow she had seen in his eyes when he lifted her from the mud. Cashin wheeled his horse, cloak snapping. Then you choose war. As the riders thundered away into the mist, Thalorian turned to her. Rain began to fall again, soft and steady. So be it, he said softly. Eloan reached for the quill tucked in her sleeve, Valor had thoughtfully provided one, and wrote a single word on the parchment she carried. One. Thalorian read it, and for the first time his smile held real warmth. Soon, he promised. Very soon. Above them, the storm gathered strength, and deep in the forest, ancient trees began to whisper of battles yet to come. The soul-forged chamber lay at the heart of Thornvale, a circular hall sunk 3 levels beneath the manor's foundations. No windows pierced its walls. Light came only from veins of living crystal embedded in the stone, pulsing with slow, rhythmic indigo. At the center stood a dais of black glass, etched with concentric rings of elder runes that had not glowed since the night Lyriel died. Thalorian led Eloan down the final stair, his hand steady at her elbow. She walked unaided now, though each step still carried a faint tremor of disbelief, her body whole yet forever changed. She wore a simple tunic of deep green, borrowed from the Enclave stores, its sleeves long enough to hide the faint scars on her arms. In one hand she clutched a small leather-bound journal and quill, her only means of conversation. The air grew heavier as they descended, thick with the scent of ozone and old incense. When they reached the chamber, Valor waited beside the dais, a silver tray in his hands. Upon it rested 2 items, a crystal vial filled with Thalorian's own blood, dark as midnight wine, and a slender obsidian needle. Eloan stopped at the threshold. Even without words, her apprehension was clear in the tightening of her fingers around the journal. Thalorian met her gaze. The binding I spoke of is not possession. It is resonance. My essence will anchor yours, giving your sunblood power a conduit strong enough to burn away the last of the void salt. If it succeeds, your voice may return. If it fails, he did not finish. He did not need to. She searched his face for hesitation and found none, only a fierce, quiet certainty. Slowly she nodded. Valor bowed and withdrew, sealing the heavy doors behind him. They were alone. Thalorian guided her to the dais. Lie at the center. The runes will do the rest. Eloan obeyed, stretching out on the cool glass. The moment her skin touched the surface, the runes ignited, soft gold at first, then brighter, responding to the sun blood in her veins. She felt warmth spread through her limbs, familiar from the healing pool but deeper now, reaching into bone and breath. Thalorian knelt beside her. He uncorked the vial and poured a single drop onto the obsidian needle. Then, with deliberate care, he pressed the tip to the crescent mark on her shoulder. The reaction was immediate. Golden fire erupted beneath her skin, racing along veins and branching rivers of light. Eloan's back arched as raw power surged through her, sunlight made liquid, searing and exhilarating. At the same moment, Thalorian placed his palm over the drop of his blood on the needle, completing the circuit. His essence met hers. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the chamber exploded with light. The crystal veins in the walls flared white-hot. Runes blazed like brands. Thalorian's blood drop ignited, not burning away but merging, midnight and gold swirling together in a violent vortex above the dais. Eloan felt him inside her thoughts. Centuries of grief, battles lost, the precise moment Lyriel's heart stopped in his arms. And beneath it all, a love so vast it had calcified into resolve. In return he saw her, the lonely childhood in the conservatory dormitories, the joy of discovering a new spell, the sting of Cassion's betrayal. And deeper still, something ancient stirring, memories not her own. Sunlit gardens. A laughter that matched Lyriel's. A promise made under starlight. The resonance peaked. Pain lanced through Eloan's throat as the void-salt lattice shattered, threads of darkness dissolving in golden fire. She opened her mouth, and for the first time since the alley, air shaped itself into sound. A single hoarse word escaped. Thalorian. His name. Raw, cracked, but undeniably hers. The vortex collapsed. Light dimmed to a gentle glow. Thalorian slumped forward, catching himself on the edge of the dais, breathing hard. Eloan sat up slowly, hand pressed to her throat in wonder. She tried again. It worked. Her voice was rough from disuse, but it was there, warm, steady, real. Thalorian lifted his head. His storm-blue eyes shone with something perilously close to hope. It did. But the moment of triumph fractured. The chamber doors shuddered under a massive impact. Dust sifted from the ceiling. A second blow followed, stronger, accompanied by the distant clamor of alarms. Vaylor's voice echoed through the stone, "My lord, breach at the northern ward. Malt Heron himself leads the assault, 100 strong." Thalorian rose, power crackling around him like static. The resonance had not only restored Eloan's voice, it had amplified them both. He felt her sunblood strength flowing in his veins, sharp and bright as dawn. Eloan stood beside him, no longer trembling. The golden glow lingered faintly in her eyes. "They came sooner than we thought," she said, the words tasting strange and precious on her tongue. Thalorian offered his hand. "Then we meet them together." She took it without hesitation. As they climbed the stairs toward the battle above, the bond between them solidified, not reincarnation, not replacement, but something new. Two souls, ancient and young, forged in shared fire. Behind them, the soul-forged chamber dimmed, its runes cooling to embers. Ahead, the storm of war awaited. And for the first time in 1,000 years, Thalorian did not walk into it alone. The first arrows struck the outer wards just after dusk, streaking like falling stars before shattering into harmless sparks against invisible barriers. From the high balcony of Thornvale's eastern tower, Eloan watched the obsidian circle's forces spread through the forest like ink through water. Hundreds of torches bobbed between the blackthorn trees, accompanied by the low thunder of war drums and the occasional howl of summoned shadow wolves. Beside her, Thalorian stood motionless, silver hair whipping in the rising wind. The resonance binding still thrummed between them, a living thread of gold and midnight that let her feel the controlled fury coiling in his chest. "They probe our defenses," he said quietly. Malt Heron tests for weakness before committing his full strength. Eloan's restored voice was still husky but steady. "How long will the wards hold?" 3 days. Perhaps 4 if we feed them blood." His tone made it clear whose blood he intended to use, his enemies, not his own. Below, Vaylor directed the sentinels along the curtain wall, their blackthorn mail blending with the shadows. Every so often a circle scout ventured too close and fell silently, throat opened by an unseen blade or pinned to a tree by silver arrows. Yet for every one that died, 2 more emerged from the mist. That night, the Enclave's war council gathered in the map hall, a vast chamber whose floor was inlaid with a living mosaic of the surrounding lands. As leaders spoke, the mosaic shifted subtly, showing troop movements in threads of light. Valor reported first. "We are outnumbered 10 to 1. Malt Heron has allied with the Ironroot clans and the Veilbreaker mages. They bring siege engines forged from void iron, capable of drinking ward energy." An older sentinel, Commander Silvara, added grimly, "Our allies in the Whispering Woods remain silent. Word is Malt Heron promised them your head, my lord, in exchange for neutrality." Thalorian's expression did not change, but Eloan felt the sting of betrayal through their bond. Centuries ago, those same woods had sworn him eternal fealty. She stepped forward, placing a hand on the mosaic table. The living map responded to her sunblood touch, brightening wherever her fingers brushed. "Then we don't wait for allies who won't come," she said. "We strike first. Disrupt their supply lines. Force Malt Heron to spread his forces thin." Silvara raised a skeptical brow. A bold plan from a scholar who until yesterday could not speak. Eloan met the commander's gaze without flinching. "I may be new to war, but I know betrayal. Cashin Vale is still among them. He knows the circle's cipher codes. If we capture him, we gain their plans," Thalorian finished, eyes kindling with approval. "A night raid. Small force. In and out before they can mount a proper defense." Valor hesitated. "Risky. If the raid fails, then we lose a handful of warriors," Thalorian said. "If it succeeds, we buy time and information. Prepare 12 of our best shadow walkers. We leave at moonset." The raid began under a sky veiled by storm clouds. Thalorian led the team himself, cloaked in living darkness that rendered him nearly invisible. Eloan insisted on accompanying them to the edge of the wards, arguing that her sunblood light could counter any void traps. Against his better judgment, he agreed. They moved like ghosts through the forest. The circle's camp sprawled across a clearing 3 miles north, tents arranged in precise rings, siege engines half-assembled under canvas, sentries patrolling with glowing amethysts that detected magic. Thalorian's team struck the supply wagons first. Barrels of oil went up in silent flames. Crates of void iron bolts shattered under precise strikes. Chaos rippled outward as guards shouted alarms. Then they found Cashin's tent, marked by the conservatory sigil he still dared to fly. Thalorian slipped inside alone. Cashin Vale stood over a table strewn with maps, golden hair disheveled, face pale in the lantern light. When he saw Thalorian emerge from the shadows, he did not reach for a weapon. He simply sighed. "I wondered how long it would take you." Thalorian's blade was at Cashin's throat in an instant. "You will come with us." Quietly. Cashin's eyes flicked to the tent flap. "I wouldn't." Too late. A circle of Veilbreaker mages waited outside, wards already raised. The moment Thalorian stepped out with his prisoner, violet chains erupted from the ground, wrapping around ankles and wrists, void-forged, designed to drain elven strength. Thalorian fought, but the chains drank his power faster than he could summon it. His warriors fell one by one, overwhelmed by numbers. From the ward line, Eloan watched through a scrying orb. Valor had left her. When she saw Thalorian drop to one knee, golden fury ignited in her veins. She ran. Ignoring Valor's shouts, she raced through the forest, sunblood light trailing behind her like a comet's tail. She reached the clearing just as Maltheron's enforcers dragged Thalorian toward a cage wagon. "Release him." Her voice cracked across the camp, amplified by raw power. The mages turned. For a moment, surprise held them still. She was supposed to be voiceless, broken. Then they attacked. Bolts of violet void energy lanced toward her. Eloan raised her hands instinctively. Golden fire answered, meeting the void midair in explosions of steam and light. Where her power touched the chains binding Thalorian, they melted like ice in sunlight. He rose, renewed strength surging through their bond, and cut down the nearest mage. Together they fought back to back, gold and midnight, sun and shadow. The remaining shadow walkers rallied. Cashin, forgotten in the chaos, slipped away into the darkness. They escaped, but at terrible cost. Only 5 of the 12 returned. The camp's supplies were destroyed, but the circle now knew the full extent of Eloan's power, and Maltheron's determination hardened into obsession. Back at Thornvale, dawn revealed the toll. Wounded filled the healing halls. Commander Silvara had lost an eye. Valer's left arm hung useless, shattered by a void hammer. In the quiet aftermath, Eloan found Thalorian in the map hall, staring at the mosaic. The living map now showed red threads closing in from all sides. "We hurt them," she said softly, "but we didn't stop them." No, his voice was raw. "And Cashin escaped with knowledge of our defenses. The next assault will be surgical." She stepped close, placing a hand over his heart. Through the bond she felt his guilt, like acid. "This was my plan," she whispered. "The failure is mine." He covered her hand with his. "No. The failure is mine. I should never have left you behind." Silence stretched, heavy with unspoken fear. Outside, the forest trembled as Maltheron's drums began again, closer now, relentless. The fractured alliances had bought them hours, not days. And in the deepening shadows, Eloan realized the true cost of war. Every victory carved another piece from the soul. Thalorian pulled her into his arms, holding tight as though she were the only anchor left in a storm-tossed world. "We are not broken yet," he murmured against her hair. But for the first time since finding her in the alley, doubt flickered in his ancient eyes. And deep in the forest, Cashin Vale knelt before Maltheron, delivering maps, ward keys, and a warning. "The Sunblood is stronger than we feared, and the exiled lord will burn the world to keep her." Maltheron smiled, "A cold, terrible thing. Then let him burn. We will rise from the ashes with her power in our veins." The siege tightened, and Thornvale's defenders prepared for the darkest night yet to come. The second night of the siege fell like a shroud, heavier than any before. Void fog, Maltheron's signature weapon, rolled in from the northern ridges, thick and oily, swallowing moonlight and muffling sound. Torches along Thornvale's walls guttered to sickly purple flames. Sentinels coughed black phlegm as the fog seeped through helm vents, sapping strength and will. From the highest tower, Eloan watched the enemy's siege engines advance. Massive trebuchets of void iron and bone crept forward on wheeled platforms, each pulled by teams of chained shadow wolves. Their counterweights glowed with captured ward energy stolen from the outer barriers during the previous day's assaults. The wards themselves flickered now, silver lines dimming to gray. Thalorian stood beside her, face gaunt. The resonance bond let her feel the toll exacted on him. Every ward he reinforced drew directly from his essence. Veins of gold threaded beneath his pale skin, her sunblood power sustaining him, but even that infinite well had limits when poured into stone and spell. "They will breach the middle wall by dawn," he said, voice flat with exhaustion. "We have perhaps one more counterstroke left." Eloan's throat tightened. "The hidden sally port beneath the eastern route bridge. We could lead a force through the old tunnels, strike their trebuchets from behind." No, the refusal was immediate, edged with something close to fear. "The tunnels are collapsed in 3 places. Maltheron's mages would sense any attempt to clear them. We would lose half our remaining warriors for nothing." She turned to him, frustration rising. "Then what? We sit and wait for the walls to fall?" Thalorian's gaze remained fixed on the advancing engines. "I will meet Maltheron in single combat beneath the gate. Old law still binds him. He cannot refuse a challenge from a high lord. If I kill him, his alliances fracture. The siege ends." The words struck her like winter water. "And if you lose?" He was silent long enough that the answer was clear. Eloan grabbed his arm, forcing him to face her. "You are not expendable. We are bound, Thalorian. If you die, part of me dies with you." His expression softened, but only slightly. "Better part of us than all of us. The Enclave cannot withstand another week." Before she could argue further, a horn blared from the courtyard below, 3 sharp, urgent notes. Valer's signal for immediate council. They descended to find the map hall in chaos. Commander Silvara lay on a stretcher, her remaining eye clouded with void poison. Healers worked frantically, but the black veins crawling up her neck spoke of hours, not days. Vaylor's face was ashen. Malt Heron sent a gift under flag of truce. He gestured to a sealed crystal orb on the table. Inside floated a lock of golden hair, Cashin veils, and a single parchment. Thalorian broke the seal. The message was brief. Deliver the sun blood by midnight tomorrow, unharmed and unbound, or every prisoner we hold dies slowly in view of your walls. We begin with the children of the outer villages. Attached was a scrying image, dozens of bound captives, fey and mortal alike, kneeling in the enemy camp, throats marked with void runes that would sever heads at a single command. Eloan felt her knees weaken. Among the prisoners she recognized several conservatory apprentices who had once shared her dormitory. Thalorian crushed the parchment in his fist. He seeks to break our will. He succeeds, Vaylor said quietly. The sentinels are ready to fight to the last, but seeing children slaughtered, morale will shatter. Silence descended, heavy as the fog outside. Eloan's mind raced. Sacrifice herself to save the innocent, or fight and condemn them. Both paths led to ruin. She looked at Thalorian and saw the same torment mirrored in his eyes. For the first time since she had known him, the ancient lord looked lost. That night, the void fog thickened until even the bond between them felt muffled. Eloan wandered the healing halls, offering what comfort she could to the wounded. Many would not see dawn. In one cot lay a young sentinel barely past his first century, leg amputated below the knee, whispering for his mother in the old tongue. She sat beside him until he slept, then moved on, throat raw with unshed tears. At the deepest hour she found Thalorian in the soul-forged chamber, the place where their bond had been sealed. He knelt before the dais, head bowed, palms pressed to the cooling runes as if praying to ghosts. She approached silently and placed a hand on his shoulder. He did not start. He had felt her coming through the bond. I failed them, he said without looking up. All of them. The Enclave. The villages. Lyriel's memory. You. The confession broke something inside her. She knelt beside him, wrapping her arms around his shoulders from behind. You did not fail me, she whispered fiercely. You gave me back my voice, my body, my life. Whatever happens tomorrow, that truth remains. He turned then and she saw tears, actual tears, on the face of an immortal who had not wept in 1,000 years. I am tired, Eloan, he admitted, voice breaking. So tired of losing what I love. She cupped his face in both hands. Then let us stop losing alone. Whatever we choose, surrender, fight, or something between, we choose together. For a long moment they simply held each other in the dim indigo light, two souls bound across centuries finding solace in shared despair. Above them, the first trebuchet stone struck the middle wall with a sound like the world cracking open. Dust sifted from the ceiling. Midnight approached. And in the enemy camp, Malt Heron smiled as he prepared the first execution, certain that despair would deliver the sunblood into his hands before another dawn. But despair has a way of forging steel from broken blades. In the quiet before surrender or defiance, Eloan and Thalorian rose together, hands clasped, bond flaring gold in midnight, and walked toward whatever fate awaited. The lowest point had been reached. There was nowhere left to fall but up. Midnight tolled from the ancient bell tower of Thornvale, each strike a hammer blow against the besieged enclave. The void fog had thickened to pitch, swallowing the stars and turning the forest into a realm of ghosts. Inside the soul-forged chamber, Eloan and Thalorian knelt together on the dais, hands clasped, the resonance bond between them burning like a solitary candle in endless dark. They had come here after the council dissolved into despair. No plan, no allies, only the grim choice between surrender and slaughter. But neither could accept Maltheron's terms. Not while breath remained. Eloan broke the silence first, her voice soft but steady. We cannot give him what he wants. My blood in his hands would unmake everything, wards, oaths, the balance itself. Thalorian's eyes reflected the faint indigo glow of the chamber crystals. And we cannot fight as we are. His numbers are too great, his void magic too corrosive. One more day, perhaps two, and the walls fall. She squeezed his hands. Then we change the rules. He looked at her sharply. What do you propose? The bond, she said. It healed me. It strengthened you. But we have only touched its surface. What if we dive deeper? Not just resonance, an intentional fusion. Sunblood and star-forged essence willingly merged. The old texts in the conservatory spoke of it as myth, the solar eclipse rite. Two become one, power magnified beyond measure. Thalorian's expression darkened. The rite was attempted only once, during the War of Shattered Skies. Lyriel and I, we considered it when all seemed lost. But the risk is death, Eloan finished. Or worse, souls burned out, bodies left empty. I know. But we are already staring at death. At least this death might save the innocent. He searched her face, centuries of loss warring with newfound hope. You would risk your soul for people you barely know? I would risk it for you, she said simply. And for the children sleeping in the villages who will never wake if we do nothing. The confession hung between them, raw and luminous. Thalorian brought her hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles with reverence. Then we do it together, he whispered. No more losing alone. They prepared in silence. Thalorian drew a circle of starlight around the dais, etching new runes with a silver athame, symbols of union, sacrifice, rebirth. Eloan opened veins at both wrists, letting sunblood drip onto the black glass. Thalorian mirrored her, his darker essence mingling with hers until the circle glowed gold threaded with midnight. They lay at the center, foreheads touching, palms pressed together over their joined hearts. Speak the vow with me, Thalorian said. Their voices rose as one, ancient words in the elder tongue. By sun and star, by light and shade, we bind what fate has remade. One soul, one breath, one flame to share. What one endures, the other bears. The chamber answered. Runes flared blinding white. The bond ignited, not the gentle thread it had been, but a roaring river. Eloan felt Thalorian's full weight. Every battle, every grief, every moment of Lyriel's death. In return, he received her human fragility, her fierce scholar's curiosity, her unyielding will to protect the vulnerable. Pain followed, exquisite, purifying. Their bodies arched as power rewrote bone and blood. Golden fire poured from Eloan into Thalorian, burning away centuries of void scars. Midnight essence flowed back, anchoring her sunblood so it no longer threatened to consume her from within. For a timeless instant, they were not two beings but one, memories overlapping, hearts beating in perfect synchrony. Then the rite crested. Light exploded outward, shattering the chamber's crystal veins into prisms of rainbow. The entire enclave shuddered as if struck by lightning. Wards along the walls flared from dying gray to brilliant silver gold, reinforced by the surge. Eloan and Thalorian collapsed together, gasping, sweat slick but alive. And changed. Thalorian rose first, helping her to her feet. His eyes now held flecks of gold amid the storm blue, faint silver threads traced beneath his skin like star maps. Eloan felt power humming in her veins, steady, controlled, no longer wild. When she flexed her fingers, sunlight danced at the tips, obedient. Through the bond, now unbreakable, they felt each other's strength as their own. Valor burst into the chamber, sword drawn, face stunned. My lord, the wards, they burn brighter than I have ever seen. And the void fog, it retreats. Thalorian's smile was sharp as a blade. Good. Then Maltheron's deadline approaches and we have a reply for him. They climbed to the highest balcony as dawn bled pale gold across the horizon. The enemy camp stirred, expecting surrender. Instead, Thalorian stepped to the edge, voice amplified by fused magic until it rolled across the valley like thunder. Malt Heron of the Obsidian Circle. Your terms are refused. Release the prisoners unharmed, or face the consequence of your arrogance. Silence answered, then laughter from the enemy lines. A scrying projection appeared in the air. Malt Heron himself, tall and cadaverous, void energy crackling around his staff. Bold words from a fallen lord clinging to ruins, Malt Heron sneered. Watch then as your defiance costs lives. He raised his hand toward the bound prisoners. Eloan moved before thought. She placed her palm on the balcony rail and released. A lance of pure sunblood light shot skyward, then arced down into the enemy camp, precise, controlled. It struck the void runes marking the prisoners' throats. The dark symbols shattered like glass, dissolving harmlessly. The captives were free, unharmed, runes broken before Malt Heron could trigger them. Maltheron's projection faltered, rage twisting his features. Thalorian's voice rang out again, cold and final. You sought a weapon. You found a reckoning. Withdraw or we come for you. The projection vanished. In the sudden hush, Eloan turned to Thalorian. Their eyes met, gold-flecked blue and emerald threaded with silver. "We end this tonight," she said. He nodded, taking her hand. "Together." Below, the sentinels cheered, a sound that carried into the retreating fog. Hope, fragile but fierce, rekindled. The rite had forged them anew. And as the sun rose fully, bathing Thornvale in light it had not seen in centuries, the fused Lord and Lady of Sun and Star prepared to meet their enemy, not as besieged defenders but as avenging dawn. The war was no longer a siege. It was a hunt. The sun dipped below the horizon, bleeding crimson across the blackthorn forest as if the sky itself anticipated bloodshed. Thalorian and Eloan stood atop Thornvale's highest battlement, the fused power of sun and star thrumming through their veins like a shared heartbeat. Below, the Enclave's remaining sentinels, fewer than 100 now, formed ranks in the courtyard, blackthorn blades gleaming with renewed wardlight. Valor approached, armored in ancient plate recovered from the armory depths. "The wards are at full strength, my lord. The void fog has burned away entirely. We are ready." Thalorian nodded. "Open the gates." Eloan's hand tightened on his. "Not a siege anymore. We take the fight to them." A fierce smile touched his lips, the first true one she had seen since the war began. "As you said, a hunt." The great gates swung wide. Thornvale's defenders poured out in disciplined silence, shadows among shadows. Thalorian and Eloan led at the fore, their fused aura casting a soft halo of gold and midnight that repelled the lingering wisps of void fog. Maltheron's camp sprawled across the northern clearing, siege engines poised, ranks of circle mages and ironroot mercenaries arrayed in defensive rings. They had expected another day of bombardment, perhaps surrender. Not this. The first warning they received was the sudden blaze of Thornvale's wards flaring outward, silver-gold fire racing along the ground, incinerating forward pickets before alarms could sound. Then the Enclave struck. Shadow walkers materialized inside supply tents, blades flashing. Sentinels crashed into the eastern flank like a dark tide. Sunblood light erupted from Eloan's raised hands, sweeping across a line of void archers and turning their arrows to ash mid-flight. At the heart of the chaos, Maltheron emerged from his command pavilion, tall, gaunt, robes swirling with living darkness. His staff of twisted voidwood crackled with corrosive energy. "Thalorian." His voice boomed, amplified by magic. "You dare bring your pathetic remnants against me?" Thalorian stepped forward, power coiling around him like living storm clouds. "I dare more than that." The two lords advanced through the melee, carving a path toward each other. Warriors of both sides parted instinctively, sensing the clash to come would decide everything. They met in the center of the clearing, beneath a sky now fully dark and starred. Maltheron struck first, a lance of pure void spearing toward Thalorian's heart. Thalorian countered with a blade of midnight essence, shattering the attack into harmless sparks. Eloan flanked left, golden fire spiraling from her palms to burn away the void shields Maltheron raised. The duel became a tempest. Maltheron summoned tendrils of darkness that lashed like whips, drawing screams from nearby sentinels caught in their grasp. Thalorian severed them with sweeping arcs of star-forged light, each cut precise and lethal. Eloan wove sunblood barriers that turned void bolts aside, then retaliated with lances of solar fire that forced Maltheron to retreat step by step. "You think your little binding makes you invincible?" Maltheron snarled, staff slamming into the earth. A shockwave of corrosive energy rippled outward, rotting grass to ash and forcing defenders back. Thalorian absorbed the wave through their bond, golden fire flaring to neutralize the corruption. "It makes us whole," he answered, voice calm as winter steel. Maltheron's eyes narrowed on Eloan. "The weapon herself fights. How poetic." He shifted tactics, void chains erupting from the ground to snare her ankles. Eloan burned them away, but the distraction cost her. A second spell grazed her side, black veins spidering across her ribs before the bond purged them. Pain lanced through Thalorian as if it were his own. Rage ignited. He moved faster than sight, starlight blurring into a storm. His blade of midnight essence met Maltheron's staff in a clash that cracked the air like thunder. Void and star warring in bursts of unnatural light. Eloan circled, seeking an opening. She saw Cashin Vale lurking at the edge of the pavilion, directing mages to reinforce their lord. Fury surged. She broke away, golden light trailing her like wings. Cashin saw her coming and paled. Eloan, wait. She did not. Sunblood fire wrapped around him, lifting him from the ground. You sold me, she said, voice deadly quiet. You watched them cut my throat. I had no choice, he gasped. Malt Heron would have. There is always a choice. She did not kill him. Instead she stripped his magic, sunblood burning away the void lattice he had woven into his soul over decades. Cashin screamed as power left him, collapsing as a mere mortal. Behind her, the true battle reached its zenith. Malt Heron, pressed by Thalorian's relentless assault, desperate now, raised his staff high. Void energy coalesced into a miniature black sun above him, dense enough to unravel wards, flesh, even souls. You want her power? Malt Heron roared. Take it with you to oblivion. He hurled the void sun downward. Thalorian met it head-on. Midnight and gold exploded from him in a perfect sphere, the full force of their fused right. The void sun struck the sphere and shattered, darkness dissolving into harmless sparks that drifted like fireflies. Malt Heron staggered, staff cracking. Thalorian did not hesitate. He drove forward, blade of pure starlight forming in his hand. One thrust, precise, merciless, pierced Maltheron's chest where no void shield could reach. Golden fire followed the blade, ignited by Eloan's will through their bond. Maltheron's eyes widened in shock. The void sun above him imploded, drawn inward by the wound. Darkness consumed him from within. His own power turned against him. He crumbled to ash before Thalorian's feet. Silence fell across the battlefield. Then the circle's remaining forces broke. Ironroot mercenaries threw down weapons. Mages fled into the forest, void robes trailing like defeated banners. The siege was over in the space of heartbeats. Eloan reached Thalorian's side as he swayed, the exertion immense even for their fused strength. She caught him, steadying them both. Around them, sentinels raised blades in salute. Valor approached, awe in his eyes. The field is ours, my lord. My lady. Thalorian looked at Eloan, exhaustion and triumph mingling in his gold-flecked gaze. We did it, she whispered, voice trembling with relief. No, he corrected gently. You did. Your light burned away a darkness I could not face alone. In the distance, freed prisoners, village children among them, ran toward the Enclave's open gates, guided by sentinels. Above, the stars emerged clear and bright, as if the forest itself exhaled centuries of shadow. The storm of reckoning had passed. And in its wake, Thornvale stood unbroken, its lord and lady forged anew in fire and night, ready to reclaim a world long lost to despair. 6 moons had passed since the night the stars returned to the Blackthorn forest. Spring unfurled across the reclaimed lands like a long-held breath finally released. Ancient trees that had stood in shadow for centuries now bloomed with silver blossoms that glowed faintly at dusk. The villages once threatened by Maltheron's wrath rebuilt their hearths, and fey children laughed again in meadows where void fog had lingered like a curse. Thornvale Enclave itself had changed. Its walls, once grim and scarred, were draped in living vines of star oak that flowered gold in sunlight. The great gates stood open day and night, a symbol that the age of isolation was ended. At the heart of the manor, in the restored grand hall where tapestries now depicted not only ancient battles but the recent victory of sun and star, Thalorian and Eloan stood before the assembled court. Thalorian wore robes of midnight blue threaded with gold, the colors of their fused essence. The silver torque of his former rank had been reforged into twin circlets, one for his brow, one resting now in his hands. Eloan stood beside him in a gown of dawn-pale silk, the crescent sunblood mark on her shoulder visible through delicate latticework. Her auburn hair was unbound, falling in waves that caught the light like living flame. Valor, fully healed and armored in ceremonial blackthorn, stepped forward as herald. People of the Whispering Woods, allies of the renewed realm, he proclaimed, voice carrying to every corner of the hall and beyond through open windows, witness the restoration of what was lost and the birth of what was promised. He turned to Thalorian. Do you, Lord Thalorian of the star-forged line, reclaim sovereign of these lands, take this woman as your equal, your consort, your bond eternal, not as subject or savior but as partner in rule and heart? Thalorian's gaze never left Eloan's. I do. by sun and star, by every oath I have ever sworn and every dawn yet to come, I take her as my lady, my queen, my soul's mirror. Valor turned to Eloan. Do you, Eloan Voss of the Sunblood line, once scholar of Eldrith and now bearer of its greatest light, take this man as your equal, your consort, your bond eternal, not as protector or relic of the past, but as partner in rule and heart? She smiled, the fierce, quiet smile that had first kindled hope in Thalorian's ancient heart. I do. By every word I have ever written and every silence I have endured, I take him as my lord, my king, my soul's anchor. Thalorian placed the golden circlet upon her brow. It flared briefly, recognizing Sunblood royalty returned after 1,000 years. In turn, she took the silver midnight circlet and set it upon his silver hair. The hall erupted in cheers, sentinels clashing blades against shields, fey courtiers releasing clouds of luminous petals that drifted like snow. Later, beneath a sky ablaze with stars, they walked the rebuilt battlements alone. The forest stretched below them, whispering its old songs now free of fear. In the distance, the lights of rebuilt villages twinkled like earthbound constellations. Eloan leaned against the parapet. Do you ever miss the quiet? The exile, the solitude? Thalorian came behind her, arms encircling her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. I missed many things across the centuries, but none of them were solitude. She turned in his embrace, fingers tracing the faint golden threads beneath his skin, marks of their permanent fusion. And Lyriel? Do I still feel like an echo to you? He considered the question with the gravity it deserved. At first, yes. Your eyes, your courage, they called her back to me. But you are not her echo, Eloan. You are the continuation of a song I thought ended. Different verses, same melody. And I love the song more now than I ever did. Tears pricked her eyes, but they were the kind born of joy. She rose on her toes and kissed him, slow, deliberate, sealing the words between them. When they parted, she smiled against his lips. The conservatory has invited me to return. To teach. They say the realms need scholars who understand both sun and star. Thalorian arched a brow. And what will you teach them? That power without heart is void. That grief can be a forge, not a cage. And that sometimes the fates return what was lost, not to repeat the past, but to heal it. He laughed softly, the sound still rare and precious. Dangerous lessons. Good, she said. The world has had enough safe ones. In the east, the first hint of dawn touched the horizon, gold bleeding into indigo, the eternal dance of their joined essences mirrored in the sky. Thalorian took her hand, threading their fingers together. Through the bond, she felt his quiet wonder. After 1,000 years of night, he had learned to greet the morning without fear. Below them, the forest stirred with new life. Somewhere a child laughed. Somewhere, a sentinel sang an old victory song with new words. And high above, 2 circlets, one gold, one midnight, caught the first rays of sunrise, gleaming like promises kept. The war was over. The dawn had come. And in the renewed realm of Thornvale, the Lord of Starlight and the Lady of Sunlight ruled not as relics of a broken age, but as architects of an age yet unwritten, bound eternally not by fate alone but by choice. Together they stepped into the light.